Hey everyone. For those of you who follow my Facebook page, I know I promised this video earlier this week, but life kind of got in the way. This video is on my observations regarding the emotional and psychological impact of the events beginning in late December 2019, early January 2020, regarding severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, which is also known as 2019 novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV, Wuhan novel coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, not to be confused with coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, which is caused by SARS-CoV-2. For the remainder of this video, I'll be referring to this as SARS-CoV-2. Since the spread of SARS-CoV-2 from Wuhan in the Hubei province of China, there has been an increasing level of fear, stress, and anxiety regarding both the spread of the virus as well as the far-reaching impacts of its effects. This fear, stress, and anxiety has caused people to act in a variety of manners, to include, but not limited to, panic buying, hoarding, profiteering, xenophobia, voluntary and involuntary isolating behaviors, and hypochondria. From my personal experiences and observations, it is my own personal opinion that the majority of these actions and reactions, and at times overreactions, can be narrowed down to one singular shared emotional response: grief. When used as a noun, Webster defines grief as deep and poignant distress caused by, or as if by, bereavement. This current bereavement is from a shared sense of traumatic loss. Our shared loss is that of the world we all knew, in one form or another, prior to 2020, and we are all grieving. The kubler-ross model, which is also known as the 5 stages of grief, was introduced by psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969 as a component of her book titled Of Death and Dying, and is typically applied to terminally ill patients and those who have lost a loved one. Kubler-Ross defines the 5 stages of grief as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, and because of these, the Kubler-Ross model is referred also by the acronym DABDA. It is important to note that an additional work titled On Grief and Grieving, Finding the Meaning of Grief Through the 5 Stages of Loss, which was co-authored by David Kessler and released in 2005 and published after the death of Kubler-Ross in 2004. The model was expanded to include any form of personal loss, whether it is major or minor. It is also important to note that the stages of the Kubler-Ross model are neither linear nor continuous. All 5 are not necessarily experienced, and they may be repeated or experienced simultaneously. The stage of denial, which is typically but not necessarily always the first step, tends to involve clinging to a false reality. The false reality people are clinging to these days stems from their personal belief that not only is the virus a hoax, but if it is not, it's nowhere near as serious as the public figures and the media portray it to be. This false reality leads them to refuse to take precautions outside of their normal routine and often dig into their routine and openly berate or denounce the opinions of others who react or respond to SARS-CoV-2 with any modicum of concern towards SARS-CoV-2, to even the basic concept of accepting its existence. The stage of anger typically occurs when those who acknowledge but not necessarily accept the reality of the possibility that the change exists. It can create frustration and a fear of uncertainty. This fear and uncertainty may cause a person to react aggressively to those they are in contact with, whether in person or not, and it may not even be in response to a statement or conversation regarding SARS-CoV-2, but out of a generalized buildup of stress and anxiety and a previously unidentified trigger or stimulus. The stage of bargaining leads to a person to think of or seek out ways to make an exchange, usually in terms of personal reformation. This exchange usually involves the pursuit of more time, usually with a personal deity, However, it can also be in pursuit of changing oneself to motivate or instigate the desired outcome. It's worth noting that many of those who spend significant focus on bargaining tend to subscribe to a particular theological belief. However, there is also a significant number of people who subscribe to pagan beliefs, even atheists or anti-theists, even if the bargaining is just with themselves. The stage of depression often results in a person recognizing but not necessarily accepting their own mortality, resulting in silent or isolating behavior. While the stages of the kubler-ross model can bring concern over a person's behavior, the stage of depression may or may not become pronounced. Oftentimes, the change may become unnoticed at first. However, when it is noticed, it is important to both respect a person's need to mourn, as well as attending to them to ensure their well-being. The last on the list, but not necessarily the final stage, is acceptance. This stage usually results in embracing both mortality, be it of themselves or others, as well as the inevitability of the change or circumstance. Many people see this as being at peace. However, acceptance can also galvanize a response, because acceptance is not synonymous with surrender. While a person can be at peace after accepting the inevitability of death or loss, it may also motivate a final push to make a change or personal sacrifice for others. Additionally, a person who takes action after acceptance may use their new reality as a call to arms for those who are in different stages of grief, and give them a means of mental and emotional support, as well as a newfound motivation or a development of forward momentum. Once again, it is important to remember that these stages may be experienced in sequence, in a cycle, in a random order, or some stages may not be experienced at all. It is important that some may experience a particular stage briefly or for a protracted period of time. Also, an important thing to remember is that how we deal with our grief and the grief of others could define our own humanity for generations to come. Martin Seligman, Ph.D., is the director of Penn State's Positive Psychology Center. In an article from Penn Today, he's quoted as saying, "The human mind is automatically attracted to the worst possible case, often very inaccurately. Catastrophizing is an evolutionary adaptive frame of mind, but is usually unrealistically negative." To refocus, Dr. Seligman offers the following advice. 1. Ask yourself, what is the worst possible situation? 2. Force yourself to think about the best outcome. 3. Consider what's most likely to happen. And 4. Develop a plan for the most realistic scenario. While I'm not a director, a college professor, and I definitely don't have a PhD, I absolutely agree with Dr. Seligman. It is excellent advice when recovering from grief and any post-traumatic stress. The thing is that in order to recover from grief or trauma, you first have to complete your journey, however long or short it may be, whether it lasts days, weeks, months, or even years. While you're making your journey, remember that you are not alone. You may feel isolated, helpless, or powerless. There are resources to help you, whether you're asking a friend, a family member, a professional, or a complete stranger. If you need help, or even just an ear, a number of resources are listed below in the description. How we respond, not only to this pandemic, but to each other, will make all of the difference in the time to come, and we have to respond together. Thank you.